with this issue. People like obviously and have legitimate fears about maybe going to class and that sort of thing. So I totally get it. So a lot of obviously some leeway and sort of thing in terms of like attendance and sort of thing, but I do have to. I think at this point, I have to really kind of make sure that we do have people in class. So I'm not a what is the person or epidemiologist or anything like that. I'm just saying cases are down. I know that I'm saying this as COVID. I'll apologize as COVID this morning, but cases are down. We do have the vaccine mandate here at school, so it's so I actually I actually was talking to Steve Miller and I said, what do you think? Well, he's always been a little more hardline than me, believe it or not. He was like, oh, you make sure they're there, blah, blah, blah. But I don't want to be too much like that, but I do have to take attendance. I do have to take that into consideration of class participation. And, and if you can't make it, then just let me know beforehand, okay? I had one student who told me that, this student said that, said he or she had a sore throat, but he would try to make it anyway. And I said, no, you stay home. So, and I go by trust here. So, but, if they say they have a sore throat, then, I'm not going to take a chance. I'm going to tell them to say that. So that's fine. Okay. Just let me know beforehand. All right. I talk to other people here, professors and that sort of thing, and we kind of take that cynical point of view, like, oh, they're coming up with all sorts of excuses, And I'm like, I got kids. So, it just says some days it was getting down to like 3 people, and it was getting like pretty difficult for things like, I don't know, this is gonna happen, but it's getting pretty difficult for things like, okay, well, we took photos of each other on the first day, and then, as weeks went by, where was the person I took the photo of? Where is the person I want to take the photo of? Or where is the person I want to interview for my assignment? Where was that? Right. So, bottom line is that we did sign up for an in-person class here, so we have to keep it in person, right? So, and to be honest with you, that is the better way to go. Those of you who whose stories I was able to review in class did well on the first assignments, So, right. And I saw that in the other section too. So there's obviously a benefit to this. Okay. As much as I know, we haven't had any outbreaks or anything like that. So we have been good that way. Okay. So, all right. Today, actually, you actually have 2 rewrites that are due. Okay. And you didn't get an A on the profile assignment or on the worksheets assignment. You can rewrite them. If you got an R, you have to rewrite them. Okay. Those are both due by end today. I should take into consideration if it's a late assignment too. When it's handed in the campus late. It actually says late on it, so you know. Okay, so it's hard to go around that. All right. So there's like I give you a 24-hour window there. It's later than 24 hours. It's the deadlines again are part of journalism, especially digital journalism. So because everything is essentially 24/7. All right. All right. So that's part of it. All right. Anybody have any questions about any of that so far? I'm going to continue to record here. People have told me they haven't had any issues here. I don't know if you have, let me know. But again, if attendance does suffer, then what's the point, right? So, all right. But I am trying to allow the fact that, COVID is still here, and I want to be able to still provide this opportunity to be able to watch this just in case. I think it helps if you've been here. Maybe you missed something you want to talk about, you want to review something. It's there for you to review what happened in class. Okay. All right. So what I want to do is I'll move on to the next phase. Early on, I talked about again the 5 tools of digital journalism. Okay. And that would be, anybody remember what that would be? You don't have to name them in order. What did I describe as the 5 tools of digital journalism? Anybody remember? One obvious one. Mike, I think you know. You had talked about it. Sorry, I know it's right. That's right. All right. What's the one that you would do? Everybody does when they do journalism. Right. That's right. Writing. Okay. All right, then I'll just help you out with the rest here. Okay, then it's editing. Okay, because we all have to. Digital journalism essentially self-edit. Okay, and copy desks are small. You know, people, not a lot of people out there to review stories as like they were before. Let me see this one. Right, and then you know the areas that we've entered here. The photo one. I mean, again, that one I allowed. Just so you know, I allowed some leeway. You know, because again, we didn't have everybody here to like take the photos and that sort of thing. So, you know, I would actually still like you to get the photos of the people you profiled. Okay. So, and remember to like, we talked about the rule of thirds. Some of you, a couple people submitted both sections photos like too late. And there was a picture of like somebody's face like this. Well, that's exactly the opposite of what I was talking about. And we're trying to avoid, you know, the yearbook, you know, prison photo. Okay, so right, that's not what journalism photography does. Also, the pose shots. Talk about that too. I know there's a lot of photography in journalism where the people are posed, and I even talked about it in one of the classes where, you know, back in the Civil War days, you know, they all kind of were like, you know, well, we're avoiding that. They had to do that in a way because they couldn't really move or anything like that. It was really photography, and they didn't really understand style, you know. And it, you know, you had to pull that thing that exploded, and it took like 5 hours to take the shot or something. All right, then it's video, because now journalists have to do video on their own. Essentially, they have to do all these things right on their own. We'll get into later in the semester. That's graphics. Okay, we're actually at beyond the halfway point now. Okay, so. Probably end up giving out 5 assignments. Okay. We've done 2 so far, and then today will be your 3rd. All right. All right. So today we're dealing with the video end of things. Okay. And here's the thing about video. Okay. First thing that you need to learn about video. Okay. Again, I go back to what I said at the beginning. Not Scorsese here, okay? I realize that every time I've done this, there's always been varying skill levels, and I totally understand that. That's great. We've had people who are like big-time YouTubers, that sort of thing, and they're masterful with this sort of thing. So the stuff I teach is probably redundant for you, okay? That's totally fine. But if you've never really done it before, haven't really done it often before, you don't feel like, you know, you're diminished. You know, because you can't do it like the way professional people do, or people who've been doing it common, right? What I'm just looking for essentially is like the basics, right? Because that's actually all you need in journalism. The idea is that, again, the most important thing in journalism is to be right, but it's also important to be fast, okay? So when you're actually out there on assignment, you don't always have the opportunity to, you know, put in the royalty-free music, and, you know, make sure you got the right amount of a song that's actually like, you know, that you could use without having to pay royalty fees, and, you know, with the cuts and all that stuff. I'm not looking for that. Okay, you're gonna be graded the same if you don't know how to do all that stuff. You're gonna be graded the same way as you would somebody who's been doing this long. Okay, so don't worry about that. Okay. All right. So the first thing just to remember, of course, when you're doing a video, is again, just like photography, is framing, okay? So again, rule of thirds. It's really important, I've said this too. I mean, there's some rare cases where maybe vertical works, okay? but it's really best to go horizontal. Okay, you get more in the shot. Right, get more in the shot because again, I mean, if you use like a typical rule of thirds. You know, it's good to maybe get like a person over here, and then like use these areas for like background to help tell the story. Okay, all right. I mean, if it's a story about something happening at Rutgers, you know, you want to like try to maybe like get, you know, something involving Rutgers, like whether it's like a street or a computer or something. You know, again, it doesn't have to be lined up this way. It could be lined this way. 1, 2, 3. You know, something that shows they're a student at Rutgers. You know, something that makes a shot more than, like I said, a prison shot. Okay. You know, all right. And then of course, again, it's not always 100% this way, but it's basically a general rule of thumb. It is a rule of thumb to actually get essentially a candid shot. I know a lot of photographers and videographers have actually like taken liberties with this. I've been there with photographers who make things look real when they're actually not really happening at that moment. I had one photographer who actually would have this one guy walk up and down the beach. I'm not kidding, about 15 minutes, up and down the beach. I was just sitting there like this, you know, but he was doing everything he could to manufacture a shot. That's actually not good. You know, I've had the opposite end too. I had to cover something in the 20 years ago. We were doing an end of century piece or something like that. And I was writing about the Wright brothers. I'm not kidding. And so we actually sat in the, you want to get a shot of the Wright brothers plane, right? So the photographer actually laid on the floor of the Smithsonian in Washington, D.C. And he waited for people to walk by. He was just waiting and just pose the shot. So anyway, but it was also inside. It was kind of dark, so you couldn't get it blurry. You know, you had to get the shot just right. That was quite a weekend. Anyway, so you want to make sure that the shot has some sort of activity. It's not just like somebody's face, okay? And again, I know a lot of the videos and social media and everything, they don't worry about that, but we do try to strive in journalism for something a little bit more than that, so, okay? All right, does anybody have any questions about that so far? All right, actually, let me leave that. All right, so I'll talk about this actually in the assignment, but a few do's and don'ts on this, okay? Important ones, okay? Is that much like writing, you know, you've been raised to basically learn how to write in a way that's like, again, what I did in my summer vacation. I mean, we're actually kind of trained to do videos kind of similarly, you know, quick, you know, like going from early on when you celebrated the holidays or something like that, you know, like, oh, the shot, you know, your annoying parents like myself going, oh, hold still, you know. You do the Facebook Live thing and you do it upside down or sideways. Don't you love when you do that? I do that. You know, my kid was in band, you know. It was like, oh, let's watch Tom in the shot. So anyway, so yeah, you want just like I talked about in writing, you want accuracy. I mean, obviously you don't want to try to avoid the guy walking up and down the beach in a manufactured shot. You want something that's actually real, okay? You want to avoid questions of integrity and stuff like that, credibility. For the clarity of focus, same deal, okay? You want it to be clear, right? So one of the things you really want to avoid, okay, is panning. Now, is it 100%, again, 100% against that? No, I'm actually going to show you a video where I'm probably going to, you know, a little bit hypocritical, but panning like this really makes for an unclear shot, okay? It really makes for an unclear shot. It's just, I mean, sometimes maybe it's good, okay, to slow pan, you know, but this whole thing, you know, not good, okay? So, you know, so that's actually like something to really try to avoid. And when that's typically done is when you're trying to show, like one of the most important things to do in a video is to show where you are, right? Because that's all part of the story, right? So so many times when there's a video that's done, it's, you know, they basically show what they call real estate shots. Okay, a lot of times they'll see like a pretty news reports, see like buildings or something. You see if it's something about Rutgers, they'll show something on College Avenue, and they'll just kind of pan like this. You know, the best way to do it is actually do it like this. You're trying to get a scenery in a shot. You do like one shot here, still, okay? Maybe you try to hold the camera as steady as possible. Professionals use like tripods to hold the camera steady. If you have parents or you do it yourself, you know, maybe they have that. Then you maybe do another shot here, another shot here, okay? So you try to keep it as still as possible, okay? All right. Also zooming in and out, not necessarily the worst thing in the world, okay? But again, it's makes the image not so clear. You really want to be able to keep the viewer as focused as possible, okay? You go in and out like that, it's hard to do that, okay? It's hard to really kind of concentrate, okay? All right. As with any kind of like video, you want to basically, any kind of story, you want to make sure it's organized, okay? So now look, I know there's like different ways videos are done, that sort of thing, but there is essentially like kind of a basic structure, and it's very similar to a written news story, okay? And I know you probably heard of this term before too, but there's B-roll, okay? B-roll interview. And what I'm asking you guys to do is essentially have a video that mixes in B-roll and interview, and then maybe B-roll and interview, okay? Now, what is B-roll? Do you know what B-roll is? No, it's fine. I'm like, so it's not just the interview. That's right. Very good. Diversifies the story, right? It was just what I was describing. And what he typically does is it's used to show the where, okay? Trying to establish the where. Who, what, where, how, why, when, just like a story, right? So often often videos follow, again, much like you would in a written story where you essentially transition and then you bring in maybe an anecdote, you transition through the story, okay? That's what the B-roll essentially does. It helps you transition through the story, okay? Usually it's good to do maybe like 20 seconds or something like that. Maybe I'm asking for in this assignment a 2-minute video. Why 2 minutes? Because typically that's actually like how much people can take. If it gets like 3, 4, 5 minutes, it's like too much time. It really is. You know what I'm saying? When you watch a video, it goes to like in that 4 or 5 minute territory. You're like, my God, how long is this thing? You know, typical news videos are usually like about 2 minutes long. Okay. I mean, it's just kind of the way it's worked out. To be honest with you, there's no rule. There's nothing written in the Constitution says that videos have to be 2 minutes. You know, it's really 2 minutes or shorter. And I've had people like turn in like 50-second videos. I mean, that's too short, okay? Just the way it typically turns out is I usually ask for a video that starts with B-roll. We essentially show the real estate of the area or something, okay? Maybe it's out on the street. Maybe it's that person's room, you know? I know we're still limited what we can do around here, so somewhat. But, you know, just do the best you can. Okay, and then it comes in with the interview. Okay, you know, the person talking in a rule of thirds setting where you basically not just have them sticking their face in the camera, but maybe you show them at a computer, you show them as something that helps identify who they are and helps also connect them to the story. Okay, all right, and then you come in with me some more B-roll. Maybe it's like, you know, another scene or something like that involves them or something. Okay. Like maybe this is the outside, maybe this is the inside. I know, I mean, I'm actually really like, I keep a pretty low bar in terms of what I'm looking for here. Okay, again, I'm not looking for Scorsese or Spielberg, okay? All right, and then maybe go back to the interview and pretty much end that way. All right, so usually that's the typical pattern. And it's good that, I don't require this, but it's good to maybe write out what's essentially a script. Don't be intimidated by that, okay? I'm just saying that it's like an outline. Basically, just identify where you're going with your video, okay? So that you know, like when you actually put it together, know where to go. Does everybody here have access, by the way, this is a important question, to a movie program like iMovie? They're not? That's good, because these computers, what the hell? I mean, there probably is a video program. I don't know. They never told me. But to be honest with you, probably the best way to do it is something like, I know people kind of there's Apples or Macs, but you know, the best way to do it is, to be honest with you, the best way to learn how to do it in news is with the most basic program that is available. Okay, that's not a bad thing. That's actually a good thing. Okay, why is that? You think? Why is it good to have iMovie in news? Simple and fast, right? Simple and fast. That's all, right? You don't have to worry about sound regulation or that stuff. You just send it out there, right? So again, probably the most popular, I think the most popular news video of all time was Sully Sullenberger landing the plane in the Hudson, and it was a surveillance video. So, you know, landed in the Hudson, just get it in. You know? So, all right. Does anybody have any questions about that so far? Yep. I think it's best to really just kind of keep us still. You know, I mean, you get like, you're like walking on the street. I think it's best to maybe. Oh, I see. Yeah. Show them walking on the street. Yeah, that's a good idea. I mean, that's actually, Sherry actually just brought up, you know, and you don't have, you think a little creatively here. Try to, what you hear my teacher say this, have fun. But it's true. You know, try to have a little fun with it. Just, I know there's actually like, it's hard to have fun when you really want to be like creative in your own right. I get it, you know, but that's actually a good idea. Like, you have the person, you don't necessarily have them walking toward the camera, you have them walking from it, you know. Another one, I mean, as like I said, you can just do the basic, what they call real estate shot, and show like the area, like still here, still there, still there. Or you could just, like she said, you could have them walking down this way or walking toward the camera, you know, that's fine. Okay. If it's like something like, say you're interviewing your roommate or something like that, whether it's a dorm or a house or whatever, maybe you're living at home or something like that. You have them walk around the house. I know this almost sounds like too basic for me to say this way, but I'm not kidding. That is actually the best way to do it. And I don't want you guys to like put much pressure. Just get the, you know, just have it like, have them walk around the kitchen or something like that. Maybe it's, I don't know if it's so much related to what we have, this topic is about, but, you know, but it, you know, I'll take it, you know. All right. This topic actually deals with COVID, so it's actually positive. All right. Let's see here. All right. You know, what we'll do like next week actually is we'll actually spend time. I mean, I actually want you to actually like kind of start on this. I want you to try to spend some time on this next week in class. Okay. You know, stuff, you know, you do some filming in class. Okay. You don't have to interview somebody in class. Okay. You can interview anybody you want. Okay. Okay. You can interview a family member, boyfriend, girlfriend, whatever. I don't care. I throw out those rules again, journalism conventions. You know. No conflicts of interest in this class, so it's all good. All right. Let's see here. Okay. Let me show you. This is actually news this morning. Colin Powell. This is actually something now that, I mean, this is why there's simplicity in the way news production is nowadays, and there's not really high demands on like what that video looks like, because this story right here, I mean, it just like broke like an hour ago. This is gonna have a video. Colin Powell, by the way, was the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff under George H.W. Bush and Reagan, I believe. He presided over the first Gulf War in 1991. And then he later went on to become Secretary of State under George W. Bush. I'll say infamously under the Iraq War in he gave a big speech in 2003 or 2002, was it? Basically saying why we need to go to war with Iraq. How Saddam Hussein. Then he later kind of like seemed to kind of shift his politics. He endorsed Obama. He endorsed twice. He endorsed Biden. He endorsed I think he endorsed Hillary. I'm not sure. Anyway, he's been viewed as a very much a leader, a kind of a centrist leader for a very long time, and a military leader like that. So he's played a big role in American scene for at least 30, 35 years. So this is going to be a big story. And of course, he also died of COVID-19, unfortunately. Anyway, so there'll probably be a video of him basically looked at his life, and it'll probably put together very quickly. Okay. Probably won't include the interviews we just talked about. Probably be like just seeing stuff that's happened already. Okay. So when you have a breaking news story like this and you have a 24/7 news operation, video has to happen quickly. Okay. Where does video typically appear in a news story? Well, this is actually rare, actually. You don't usually see it this high up, but actually what the New York Times does essentially is they have their own section right here. And but what they try to do is they try to, like with every story, they don't always, most of the stories don't have this, but they try at least to get obviously a photo and a video to accompany almost every story, but most of the stories don't do that. So what they do is sometimes they just do videos on their own. What I'm asking you guys to do for this assignment, I'll show you in a bit, is a lot of times news videos serve as an extension to the main story. Okay, they don't replace the main story. It's like what they call a sidebar. Okay, a sidebar essentially, I may have described this already, but just as a reminder, a sidebar essentially provides more depth to the overall story. Okay, right. It helps you get to a place that maybe you felt like, maybe you interviewed somebody for a story and maybe you need to interview several people for a story, or maybe it's a story like the one I'm going to show you where it's just a bland news story or something like that, but you felt like it needs like some human voice. So you use the video as an opportunity to do that, so it doesn't get bogged down into the written story. It sticks out on its own and people can get some sort of humanization of a story about COVID. Okay. All right. All right. Let's just look at like what they do here. This looks like a video they kind of like put together quickly, and it's about, and here's another point I meant to mention. There's actually two options you can take with this. I don't care either way. People like to narrate their own videos, okay, but you don't have to. A lot of times news videos are done without a narrator. They just let the people who are actually being interviewed speak. That's fine too. What's the benefit of one or the other? It's hard to say. I would say that the narrator obviously will help tell the story or something like that, but sometimes it can make for, just a little too much, Sometimes all you need to hear is the person speaking, There's something artistic about that. There's something about that that actually makes it even more simplistic and easier to understand. You just have the person interviewed. And another thing that's optional also for this story, because I say this because I know, again, some of you have done these videos over and over again. Title cards, showing titles and stuff like that, or words and stuff like that, which you'll see in this video are not required. Okay. I'm just looking for something that's simple. Okay. Simple and easy, okay, as possible. All right. Anybody have any questions about that? All right. So let's just see what they're doing here. So this is about the frenzy at the school boards meetings, and actually they don't have a narrative, but they do have title cards. Where people were showing up basically protesting mask mandates, vaccine mandates, that sort of thing.
For crimes against humanity. The governing body should fear the people.
Sorry,
we are pissed off.
So there you.
We will not bow down to communism. We will not allow this to continue. We will be outside your houses with megaphones. You will not get sleep.
We are not giving up any rights.
My 12-year-old son is home by himself right now, and there are protesters banging outside the door.
Do you think that the 4 feet of marble that holds you above high in this chamber will help you from the fate of humanity which you are unleashing? No! It won't!
This is not your building. This is not your building. No. We will not be pushed off down.
You, the evil, the wicked, will be dethroned. For our public servants, all notice that we will not now, nor ever again allow our inalienable rights and constitution.
I almost felt like that goes on too long, you know? I felt like actually that needed like some sort of transitions. It was like the title, actually they used title cards as their transition. They actually didn't use it to kind of break up the flow, but I don't know. I felt that like just kind of went on too long. I felt like I was getting hit over the head with that, you know? That's why I feel like it's important. They probably could have done things like, I don't know, what could they have done to maybe break up the flow there based on what I was talking about before? I think real estate. Yeah, right. They could have actually done an interview. This stuff could have been the B-roll I was talking about. This could have been the where, you know? Especially that one guy with the freaking deep throat voice. I don't care what side of the politics you're on, but man, that was like, my stomach was starting to roll. God. You know, one interesting thing about this though is that, so yeah, I actually did that on purpose to not necessarily show you how a good video works, but basically show you how it cannot work. And I feel like that's just hitting it way over to the head. Is way too unpleasant. I felt like maybe like, and also not only that, you know something? I mean, having like some sort of an interview or something like that provides better context, right? You want to get to as close to the truth as possible. And I mean, I'm not backing what these people are doing or something like that, but don't you kind of sometimes want to know like what gets inside these people's heads? You know, don't you want to kind of know like sit down and talk to them, and maybe they might be completely irrational, you know? But don't you want to like say like, what's the deal? Why are you actually like going to these school board meetings? Can you show me like a side where maybe they're not screaming at me, you know? So I think that actually would help provide context and help break the flow. It makes it more watchable, okay? But one thing they did, if you do notice, like, oh, if you do, you know, it's interesting when you watch this because it's like, I think people kind of naturally go for the rule of thirds when they frame things, okay? I mean, this isn't the best rule of thirds here, but you notice that this camera doesn't, I mean, this is probably a camera used by whoever does the video for that council or Port of Ed or whatever, right? But you can see it's just not like on him. It makes it a little bit, even though this part's, but you know, it makes it a little bit more watchable when you actually have like more in the frame, okay? What I see actually here is essentially, I mean, again, this is probably a bit of a stretch, but this actually probably does qualify for the so-called rule of thirds, okay? Because here you have, this shows person standing, probably better if it actually showed the person. But this shows that this is going to be a crowded meeting, okay? You know, it tells part of the setting, okay, this describes part of it. So there's another person here, another person here. And this to me, like, kind of like, I don't know, shows also that it's not just all people screaming or something like that, but there's other people there too, either for an official capacity or just there to be there, you know? That there's probably more of this meeting to just maybe screaming people or something. So anyway, the idea here is that it shows essentially 3 different things, okay? All right. All right. Let me show you maybe a little bit a better example. And actually, this actually is, this isn't necessarily the best example of video journalism, but it kind of gets a little bit closer. And I have to admit, I show this because I have to admit, I kind of enjoy seeing people's faces when they see a certain face up here on here. So, well, you know, why not? It's early, right? Why not have a little fun, right? So, so anyway, that's also a Rutgers story. So this to me actually, like, is the perfect example of maybe a story serving as a sidebar to a larger story. Okay, so I'll tell you what happened here. Did we have any parents or anything like that who went to school here in the 80s? Oh, really? When? Oh, okay. Wow, yeah. Get to the 90s now. Wow. You want to hear that? I'm like, ah. Just give me one sec. Okay. All right. Well, anyway, so what happened was there was a fraternity called Lambda Chi Alpha, and so in February of 1988, this fraternity. I mean, you see a lot about fraternities, right? My son was a fraternity brother here at Teak. So anyway, they were, I don't know how to put this, but they were not viewed as I know a lot can be said. And I know a lot of things have changed, and a lot of things, perspectives have actually obviously changed for the better, I believe, obviously. But they were not viewed as like the most dangerous fraternity on campus, okay? But they eventually became the most notorious because what happened was there was a fraternity pledge, who drank 33 kamikazes, 33, during a hazing ritual, okay? And unfortunately, he passed, okay? He was 19, his name was James Callahan, and anyway, there was this story here, they won, and actually Rutgers actually kind of got like lumped into that whole thing of like too much drinking on college campus. Almost became kind of like the poster child for that, you know? In fact, I married my wife 7 or 8 years later. When I met her mother-in-law, actually, a couple years before then, so one of the first questions she asked me, she said to me, like, isn't Rutgers a party school? Maybe not so much worse than your school, but whatever, fine, and we'll get defensive. But yeah, that was basically the stigma, but these things have actually also happened since then. But this was like one that actually got us on all the cover of the magazine and stuff like that. So there was a lot of like news out there about like what's the latest. A lot of the fraternity brothers got indicted. It was 33. I think maybe 5 to 10 got convicted eventually. So essentially what this video does essentially shows first starts with the actual story itself, basically updating what's happening with it. And fraternity parties, and I guess all parties were banned for a year, I think it was. And so what happened was, so what they did was then they kind of transitioned into this sidebar story where they get reaction from people, okay? And essentially that's actually like what I'm going to be asking you guys to do in the seminar I'll tell you about in a few minutes, okay? But that's often what video is used for in news stories, to often to get action from people, okay? All right, and that's because that's the story in itself, all right? So let me show you what's going on here. And you'll see what they do here. Essentially, there is some panning going on. Okay, so I mean, this is a news video. It's not the highest quality or something like that, but basically, it kind of actually does follow that kind of ebb and flow I talked about before between B-roll and interview, Okay.
Medical tests are still being conducted on the body of a Rutgers University freshman to find out if he drank himself to death at a fraternity pledge party. News Force Perry Feld visited the campus today.
At first glance, this fraternity looks like any other on the Rutgers.
Yeah, it's a zoom out, but I actually prefer the zooming out and zooming in the panning. Okay, at least you can see something. Okay, that's actually at the site of the Kabod house now. Okay.
University campus. But a closer examination reveals the remnants of an all-night pledge party that has closed the Greek house of Lambda Chi Alpha. A pledge party that has left freshman James Callahan dead, apparently from drinking too much, and another student treated at a nearby hospital for alcohol-related illness.
The university is in mourning because of it. It's a terrible situation, terrible incident, and it's one that I think we
one of 13 students who had been invited to join the all-male fraternity. According to one student, pledges were told to drink until they got sick, and evidently that's not an uncommon sight around the university.
I think a lot of people get very drunk. I think if you ride a campus bus on a Friday or Saturday night, you see people getting sick on themselves. You see people passing out. I think it's a big problem.
It's widespread throughout the campus, whether in fraternity, in the dorms, whatever. And I don't know how they're gonna stop it.
Callahan and the rest of the students pledging the fraternity
I don't know how they're gonna stop it. I don't know how many times my kids have said that to me over the last 10 years because they found this video. I don't know how they're gonna stop it. It'll be like right in the middle of dinner. Hey, Dad, I don't know how they're gonna stop it. Shut up. Anyway, when I first started showing it, was funny. You know, like we didn't have masks on, but it was like I literally saw people go like this. I guess my hair was a little darker back then. Anyway, so they actually use a narrator here, okay? And they have this guy here, which I guess is part of the reaction, but you know, they show some photos of the scene, okay? Not totally like going by the rule of thirds, okay? But they do have a card there and they have basically what I would call filth. There's at least 2 of the 2/3, right? All right. You know, I mean, you could argue here that this is, I mean, I guess not the perfect 2/3. I mean, rule of 2. It's not the perfect rule of thirds. I mean, but there is like essentially like a fireplace here. I guess that's what it is, right? There is some scenery here, basically showing that this guy is a provost and he has some like kind of like professorial kind of office, right? You know. So basically, then it transitions over to her. You know, so basically we have like, essentially we start off with scenery, the landscape I was talking about, okay? Then it goes to him. Then it goes back to her, which essentially I would say is part of the scenery because she's in front of the fraternity house. And it goes, you know, B-roll essentially, kind of like B-roll. Then it goes to her. Now this is actually like, there's total like 80s haircut, right? This again, I mean, again, you could really stretch the rule of thirds here. I'm not picky about it, okay? But you do have the kind of stained glass window, I guess, that shows maybe the antiquated, you know, kind of like ornate, you know, nature of the university that was born in 1766. Yeah. The staircase, you know, and her, you know. Right, so there's maybe your 3 parts of the photo or frame right there, okay? Then you got this guy, me. I lost that jacket. Oh well. Anyway, this shows the outside. It was like one of those days where it was like drizzly and there was like still some crunchy snow left on the ground, you know. And you have some trees, you have me, you have the little collegiate, you know, I guess the kind of cheesy 80s sweater, right? Like a yuppie-ish kind of thing, you know. You got some old buildings in the back, you know. I would say maybe that this is, my face is probably a little bit too big. I would have actually probably strived to get a little more in that photo, you know. But there is, again, the idea with like rule of thirds is actually trying to get some scenery in the background. You can see it when, like you see in a lot of interviews, the person is actually, have you ever noticed, is actually usually pushed to the side or the other side? Okay. Because that's the whole idea, is like try to show as much as you possibly can in the photo, okay? To tell as much about the story as possible in the photo, in the frame, okay? All right.
In the dorms or whatever.
And then it goes back to,
And I don't know how they're gonna stop it.
yeah, and they're panning, I know. They're showing old Queens, not the bar. But they're showing they're going a little slow, so whatever. But you know, they're trying to show this kind of quaint university where, you know, how could this happen, you know, here kind of thing, you know? And, you know, it's as old as dirt.
the fraternity.
And then you have a narrator. A lot of times if you're narrating, it's actually probably best to speak while the B-roll is happening, okay? I mean, that makes sense, right? It helps you transition. Because you use the B-roll as a transition, the narrator helps transition from place to place, okay? Setting up the next thing that's going to be said, setting up the next point that's going to be made, okay?
There's a legal drinking.
And then, I'm sorry, another thing is also like sometimes, but another thing you could do also is have the person who's being interviewed talk over the B-roll if you want to do that. Or you can have nobody talk over the B-roll. I don't care. You know, maybe that's too difficult to do. Okay.
To 21, a legal limit that students admit is easy to get
It's the
around.
old man
And a
referees.
problem
Oh, there it
school
is.
administrators acknowledge.
We try and encourage students to run non-alcoholic parties. We have enforcement regulations and policies, but peer pressure is still very, very strong. Combating all of those efforts that we may take.
Fraternities will almost become like drinking clubs now.
This is probably a better like example of rule of thirds here. As you can see, like these are we're pushed to the side and they got the fraternity house here. You know, and by the way, like this is like 33 freaking years old. So I don't know, they probably would have used the actual tripod. You notice how the camera's shaking a little bit. I mean, they're trying really hard to hold that camera steady, but even when you don't realize it, you notice this, like when you're actually like holding it like this, your hand can still shake, you know? So you don't necessarily need something to hold it in place. Sometimes what I do is actually like if I didn't have a tripod or something, I would put it on top of a car or something just to keep it steady, but not required. Just hold the camera as steady as possible and with your phone, okay, is probably your resource here, okay? Just you hold it as steady as possible. But here you have actually the College Avenue gym, you have Lambda Chi Alpha right here, and you have him, okay? 3 parts, okay?
Now, so that I think it was not about time to like this happen. I wish it had been something where it was just a shock, but maybe this will just change the atmosphere of fraternities here to clean up their act.
Do you think it's going to change partying habits here at the school?
I don't think so.
You got, again, background, brass.
Not on a long-term basis anyway. I think that for a while, things will slow down and then they'll get back to the regular behavior, basically.
Sound
And
familiar?
after the fact that Lambda Chi Alpha.
Hey, there's your person running toward the camera.
All fraternity and sorority parties have been temporarily banned. Harry Peltz, News 4.
Okay. So there you have it. So again, not it's a basic example, but it does actually kind of, again, follow that kind of ebb and flow, you know, B-roll to interview, not perfectly, but B-roll to interview and that sort of thing, okay? Do we have any questions about that? All right, so what do I want you guys to do? Okay, so this is now posted, and you are the Monday Section 1 class, just remember, okay? I'm not saying that to be condescending or like that, I'm just telling you, just remember that I actually, I know it's even confusing for me to follow this sometimes, but just make sure you're posting under the right title, okay? But anyway, so this is actually me due in 2 weeks, okay? What I'm asking you to do is actually to write a story, right? I'm actually gonna I can tell you this much. I'm gonna probably de-emphasize the quality of the writing part on this and actually put more emphasis really on the video, okay? The video, I mean, the story itself, I actually just asked you to basically rewrite a press release, okay? You know, just rewrite it so that it's as simple as possible, okay? But, and actually what the story is about, it's actually a press release, it's an old one actually, from the governor, okay? Giving $60 million in coronavirus emergency relief funds to counties, local governments. So it's basically money to help counties and local governments get back on their feet as we hopefully pull out of this whole ugly pandemic, okay? So I want you guys to do is actually take this and rewrite this into a story that's about 500, 800 words, okay? But to write it in a way that's simplistic and as readable as possible, okay? So I made, you know, when you go through this, you'll see like Governor Murphy today, alongside Congressman Andy Kim, blah, blah, blah. I mean, do you really need all these names, okay, up here? The main point, though, is that Murphy's giving money to these counties to help with COVID. So you want to try to keep it as simple as possible and about much like you did on the worksheet assignment, okay? And just stick with what's important, okay? And then you could basically fill out that probably one of the first questions you want to answer is what? So he's giving money to these counties to help with COVID. What's maybe one of the first questions you might have? Yeah, what's the money for? Okay. So he's giving money, but what does he want him to do with it? Okay. And that's actually here in the release. Okay. So that's probably that's your second and third paragraph, maybe. And maybe then you add some of the reaction from some of the people here. Okay. All right. So just rewrite that release into a story. And then what I want you to do is to actually interview somebody for the story, okay? Interview somebody to get reaction, okay? In this story, in this video, you're only gonna interview one person, okay? I want you to interview multiple people because that could be proved to be a little bit difficult today's age, okay? Just pick somebody you know, that's fine. All right. So please write the attached release, as it says here. Actually, I should go to student view, right? Please think of this as like a breaking news assignment. So basically write it as though it's happening like that day, okay? Play a little pretend, okay? You're writing it on Tuesday, write Tuesday, okay? No photos required, but the idea here is almost like you're scrambling, like you're working, you don't have to work on this fast, you have 2 weeks, but the idea is that you're trying to scramble to put something together that basically, is not just some bland news story. You want to like show like what kind of an impact it may have on people. And if people are happy about it, then you want to interview somebody, or they feel skeptical about it, you interview somebody who provides that kind of context, okay? All right. So I just want one person interviewed for the video, that's it. Just somebody just to get reaction, okay? I mean, they could talk about, how this might benefit economically, might benefit things in terms of like, improving people's health, sort of thing, whatever. Any kind of money that's needed will help, the area coming out of the economic and pandemic fatigue, okay? So what do you need to do for this? Okay, equipment, again, now you just really need your smartphone, that's it, okay? If you have something you want to use that's different from that, that's fine, okay? But that's all I'm asking for here, okay? It's just basically something this, okay? Again, you need to think of this as like a sidebar to the main story. So the main story is a bland story with the politicians, and then this is just your video is the people, voice to the people, right? All right, so the main news of the video will be your video subject, and basically just them talking about them. Again, talking about this subject and how they react to it and how they feel about it. Again, please frame the frame of the video using the rule of thirds we talked about. All right. All right. You need to focus again. B-roll, another thing is also called cutaway. Okay, it's essentially cutting away to kind of diversify the content of the video. That's another term they use for B-roll. Okay, and how it's aligned in the actual video. Okay. That basically helps answer the who, what, where, how, why, when of the story. I mean, mostly the where, I would say, okay? But I mean, it also could show some of the, if it's a story about somebody who's like, let's say you interview somebody who's like a Rutgers student or something like that, who's hoping that like whatever money comes into their area will help them and maybe help them, Rutgers come out of this pandemic so we can like take off our masks on our face and stuff like that. And stuff like, and have like full classes again and stuff, then maybe you want to, try to get something like a computer or something that shows they're a student, in the frame of the video, or in the B-roll, you show maybe like they have Rutgers paraphernalia hanging up. If they're maybe like talking about, how coronavirus has impacted their job situation, maybe you want to, I don't know, show something about that. Maybe you want to show where they work or something. I don't know, whether it's a restaurant or a student center or something. All right. Okay. Anybody have any questions about that so far? We could also discuss what ideas you have in mind for that, like next week. So try to like come next week with like ideas in mind, because you have 2 weeks on this. But we'll work on like, following up on this, and we'll even do some video in class to help work on this. Okay. Again, do not pan. Okay. Videos like stories, they also are about clarity and focus. They're not like vacation videos, like they call them. Okay. Typically, if you're trying to show a wide area, do it one still shot, keep the camera still, and show another still shot and another still shot. Okay, and you line them up all in a row. Okay. All right. It should be about 2 minutes long. Narrator is not mandatory, neither is title cards. And again, not looking for scores easy here. Okay. All right. Anybody have any questions about anything? All right. Well, do you have any questions about everything overall? I'm sorry. But you raise your hand, so- Yeah, that's fine. What about the sun? Oh, sun.
But I remember that we were talking about this before, and there's times where towards the end of it, where it's very like leading, where they like kind of trying to get like the community to close at the same time. But the words that they just kind of do that. So I'm kind of like thinking like how exactly I can go about it. I know it's not the easy to do, but
What are you doing?
avoid like trying to just get them to agree with that.
Oh, really? Well, it's interesting, like video is much like writing, much like recording. You always want to, like, no matter what kind of reporting you do, my point of view, you want to always ask what questions you're going to use. So, an interview itself, this is like something like about an interview, right? So it's like, I'm trying to mention, saying that usually, ultimately, you'll love to get to a point where you can actually feel comfortable and maybe get some conversation, that sort of thing, and everything happens naturally and you answer questions. But I mean, interviews often start off awkward, especially when somebody you don't know. And to me, actually, I like it. It's essentially not a conversation. The story itself should resemble a conversation, whether it's a video or a written story. But it often, the way it's actually handled is typically a job interview. Where basically the first questions are, what's your name? You might be talking about essentially like trying to avoid like the leading questions and stuff like that. Or words and people's names. Yeah. I think the thing is that one thing to keep in mind is that just like news itself, interviews can be unpredictable, so you should allow for that, instead of like, I mean, it's perfectly fine. You can do this when you actually come up with questions and everything. Basically, think of what it's fine to ask questions where you think you might have the answer. It's fine to ask those, but don't be surprised if they don't provide that answer. Because then you just have to recalibrate, And then, also keep in mind that like you don't have to ask a set list of questions. I mean, it's good. You always should become prepared, especially at a video interview, a list of questions. But always be prepared to maybe go off track. I found myself doing this recently when I was interviewing people for insurance, because I'm still like, I have to admit, even though I've been on this job for like 3 months and everything, as far as insurance matters are concerned, I'm like, risk assessment, what? What's that? What are you talking about? So I actually had a hard time pivoting off my set script of questions, but I think there's actually like a point where you have to be. I think the thing is just to kind of let people. First of all, you got to let people talk, and I mean, I think if they don't like provide what you need, then that's the way it goes. I mean, you might want to like. I mean, I don't like it when I see an interviewer like pushing to the point where they're trying to get the right question out. That's like what they call gotcha journalism, It was some Sons of Sam. Was that actually about? It was connected to the Son of Sam. Oh, you know what he's talking about? It was a serial killer, right? In 1977, he was roaming the streets of New York. Right? His name was David Berkowitz. He's still in prison.
fault stuff, and we've talked to various public sector, but we try to make it seem like it's way more deep than that. It's really like a full fucking hour.
Yeah, I mean, you get stories like that where they have maybe theories, and it might be based on research that's good research or something like that. But sometimes you see like the executions of what's manipulated, you know? So, I mean, viewers see what, you know, and it's, I think it's always best to try to keep the interview, and I know it's a little bit puritanical from this, but just try to keep the interview as honest as possible, you know? Yeah, because one kind of, and I talk about this in media ethics when I teach that, but one thing that's really kind of slamming journalists hard these days is when they develop narratives, you know? A lot of people, and I don't care what side you came down on the whole Afghanistan issue and everything, but media took a big hit from the critics during the whole Afghanistan pullout because they had basically a preconceived narrative that it was going to be a shit show, you know? So a lot of the interviewing and everything seemed to kind of be railroading people in that direction, you know? And there was probably a fuller, larger story involved there, you know? So the media's actually been taking a lot of heat because of that kind of thing, you know, where they've been kind of manipulating, kind of railroading people. You really just need to let people talk, you know? You know, you just really need to let them talk and be as honest as possible. Viewers and readers see that, you know? And now readers and viewers have an opportunity to rail about that. They go on Twitter and scream about it. You know, there's a couple of media critics I like to read. It's actually kind of funny. It was like, yeah, I don't care what side of politics you're on, you know, but was it last week when they were basically saying that Joe Biden is creating all these supply chain problems? I mean, he's not creating by himself, but they were, the media developed this narrative that he was basically going to ruin Christmas. And there was this guy. These are like journalists from like Harvard and Yale and something like that. And like, I mean, what gets into their minds when they think like this? And so Biden's walking away from the podium, and this guy from CBS News yells, "Will people get their Christmas presents on time this year?" I mean, what is he, Santa Claus? I mean, come on, man. I mean, that's all part of the narrative, and I think that's like getting people pissed off. It's not just like making mistakes and stuff like that, but it's like manipulation, you know? So, I mean, if you're a documentarian, you know, a lot of times you're gonna come in with an end, you know, and there's nothing wrong with that. And I mean, it's basically marked that way. It has, you know, it's not necessarily supposed to be objective necessarily, but a documentarian, you know, I mean, it's, like Michael Moore, you probably heard of him, and he hasn't done one in a while, but his were very much like slanted. But that's pretty much was stated that way, as long as you're upfront about it initially, you know. But you know, there's like some news documentaries are not presented that way, but they come across slanted anyway. So it's a very good question. I appreciate that. Anybody else have any questions about that? All right, well, I don't think it'd be a file with this, but we ended now. And I want to thank you, by the way, very well attended. I want to meet that kind of stuff. Thank you very much. I appreciate the engaging questions and stuff like that. So maybe let's come back next week and do some video. Yay. All right. You know, if you have any questions, okay? I'll try to get those rewrites back to you in the next couple of days. Okay. Hello.
Oh, yeah, this is-
Yeah,